Welcome to Tales to be Told in the Dark. What are we up to? Episode 26, I think it is. I said I was going to be talking about the history of Germany and what it reveals, but before we do that, just while it's fresh in the mind, there's no such thing as coincidences. It's on the sister channel, Webart Productions. There'll be a few readings of Wagner's prose works and essays and things. Often talked about, but very rarely are they actually read. Rather strange, considering what they show. And on a sort of related note, James Trude has done a fabulous live stream. Nazi Triplets, sort of three Max Egans is the sort of cover picture, the thumbnail picture. It's very perceptive and something I feel that you might want to look at. How do we put this? A lot of things, politicians or those going to get their Golden Globes are nominated, and it's always good to look for the common denominators in things. That it's rather funny. I often refer to them as you know who, and I had someone say, "You don't know who they are," and it's like, no. UNO and WHO, but they're just sort of umbrella terms. But everything is finite, so even with remains the things that are left behind. There's a finite number, so they're rations. I think they're called. I think remains, another word for it is corpse, and of course they're rationed. I think you can join the dots on what I'm saying there. Anyway, we get to the main topic, the history of Germany. So, to understand this, let's look first of all at the demarcation points. You've got Northern Europe. Now, if you go back several centuries on this history timeline, you'll find that many of the Northern European languages are far more common to each other. And in Sweden, there's an area roughly sort of halfway, and I don't know how far north it goes, but there's bilingual road signs, and the older Swedish can be understood perfectly in Iceland, which I thought was quite an interesting observation. So you've got basically a dividing line, so you could say the Flemish-speaking part of Belgium, and above that, then what is Germany, and then it drops down because the German-speaking world includes Austria. Mostly, I think it's a predominant language in Switzerland. The little Principality of Liechtenstein. We mustn't forget Liechtenstein, which means lightning stone. Right next door to Switzerland, and rather interestingly, it's 8 by 8, 64 square miles. It's a bit like a checkerboard, really. That's 8 by 8 as well. Just a coincidence, of course. Nothing to see here. And Switzerland, of course, is a neutral country. So yes, and then you've got the German-speaking world actually went right sort of round at one point to the Baltic states. area known as Prussia, which now has sort of turned into Poland. And then, of course, you've got below that, sort of halfway across Belgium, you've got the Wallonian, which is the French-speaking part of Belgium. So you've got what would be the class or called or referred to as the Romantic languages. So there would be Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French, and then you've got to the east of really sort of Italy and Germany, you've got the Slavic languages beyond that. So you've got a sort of, in the sort of European landmass, as it were, you've got a linguistic demarcation of three distinct areas. Now, from a perspective of etymology, there's a pattern of the English come from England, the French come from France, Belgians come from Belgium, and Italians come from Italy, and so on. But there's always an exception to the rule. So you'll have the Netherlands, which have Dutch, the Dutch people, and of course Deutschland. You have Germans. I don't know, it just sounds German, not implying that Germans are germs, but it sounds more like a sort of switching the tables terminology. Why aren't they referred to as Deutschlanders? It would be far easier. Interestingly as well, Deutschland, Dutchland, very similar. And of course, if you look at the Dutch national anthem, there is a line that says, "Are we of German blood?" Now, there is a sort of Google or Wikipedia explanation of this, that it's something to do with the Orange household, but the oranges are associated with Spain, which is rather bizarre, this explanation that's given, but who knows what is the truth about history, really, anyway. I mean, if you look on a Wikipedia article on history of Austria, you'll see that it says the Holy Roman Empire was dissolved in the year 1806. So what was this Roman Empire doing for the sort of last 400, 500 years prior to that? Because as I thought that with history, the Holy Roman Empire had sort of collapsed sort of about 1200 to 1400. I thought that was rather interesting. So anyway, Germany or Deutschland was sort of formed, I think the figure was 49 principalities, mostly dominated by Prussia. It was the sort of largest group. So you had this German Confederation after this dissolving this Holy Roman Empire that came about 1815, which ran until roughly about 1871, when you have this unification. And interestingly, 1871, that is 31 years before 1902, and then if you go 31 years the other side of 1902, you have another unification of Germany in 1933. It's like interesting the way that sort of history repeats itself. This is obviously what Jason on Archaic Channel was showing. It's these isometric marker years, And obviously 1902 is a Phoenix year, and you've got the similar events played out either side of that. And you'll also notice this, we're in a realm of linear time. So if you think like a grandfather clock with that swinging pendulum, which it's a bit like the Inquisition axe that's coming down and getting lower with each swing. But if you're not going to confess your sins, and you're going to have to be put through all these things, it's for your own good, you know. But it's going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. We'll just burn you. We'll give you one more chance to confess, and then we'll just burn you. But it's going to hurt us more than the person that's burnt. Obviously, this is the mindset of this world that we find ourselves in. Anyway, back on topic. Sorry about the little tangent there. But it's just as it comes with these tales. They're all stories after all. Make of it what you want. Just don't shoot the messenger here, hey? I'm just sharing. One moment. And we're back. Excuse me. That's why Paul just had a bit of a coughing fit. Yeah, so sorry about that. I couldn't cough and pause at the same time. That sort of caught me out. Let's just have some water first. That might be the answer. Right. So where were we? Yes, so you've got this pendulum swing. So you have this. It's funny, you've got 1815, and then like 99 years later brings us to 1914. Now, as I understand the story, it was the brother of the Austro-Hungarian emperor. His brother was assassinated in Mexico, which somehow morphed into Deutschland, the German Empire, being sort of like the bad boy that now is being ganged up on from the east and the west. Although it was actually a fellow German-speaking nation. But what are we to make of this? What is being shown here? Germany and Austria, and even Italy, you could say are Central Europe. So the one side of it is the west, and the other side is the east. So you could almost see this as like two hemispheres of the brain when you're not of one mind. So, and of course the divide and conquer, well, what easier way than to divide Europe than to go for the centre of it on its sort of vertical axis and sort of split it down the middle. And of course, after 1945, that split happens again, and we call one side east and we call the other side west. But when they leave this little pocket called Berlin, and we keep a story going, and all the way through this, of course, you've got this building up of an ism called nationalism and pride, and which you can then, obviously pride comes before a fall, so then you just have this sort of indoctrination of shame and guilt that's placed upon these people, and you have to wonder why that this particular country has been so targeted, and the whole thing about Germany, from whose perspective? I mean, there's been plagues and things that there was that dancing plague which seemed to start in Germany, allegedly, and of course the Rhine and rain, banking and such like, and of course the River Rhine is quite a motorway for all kinds of trafficking of goods and things. And it's funny how people think that I don't know what most people's um, concept of human trafficking would be, but let's just say that it doesn't necessarily have to be visible change. It could be coercion by, well, if you go to one of these European countries, you'll be housed, you'll get benefits, and here's a quick fix thing we're going to entice you with, because we know it helps. We can orchestrate things, and we can now create a sort of a right-wing, a nationalism backlash, because it keeps you all fighting amongst yourselves, you see. And of course, it does help if you bring in culturally very different peoples together, and you exploit this. I mean, there's a lot of money to be made out of these things if you're in the certain positions, self-selected, elected, or whatever, you know, or jumping on the bandwagon and becoming a hedge priest, which is a term for a politician. One of three that Wagner used in the little short I made earlier about god chanters and hedge priests and brisket beaters. And look that up if you want to know what that refers to. But getting a little bit following in the footstep of Wagner there, with shining a light on something that seems to get very agitated when the light is shined upon it. It doesn't like bright light. It seems to like to stay hidden as a hidden hand in the darkness, shall we say? Yes, so it's one continuous swingometer all the time, and it makes you wonder what else is being trafficked along this, same as this gas pipeline. Got to be careful what we say. Of course, this is all an external play-out story, but it's worth reflecting on what is being shown in the external, in the macro, and also what it alludes to if you can undo the twist of these twisted stories, of where this goes when it is played out internally, within oneself. But interestingly, historic implications of things that Wagner wrote about, Richard Wagner, it sort of makes you wonder why, if there was a certain amount of control in, or things being orchestrated in the 1840s, like the 1848-49 revolution in Dresden, the Dresden uprising. Now that's interesting, because that's in Europe, 1849, so we're looking at, what we're looking at here, 1848. So we're looking at 52, 54 years, and that brings us to 1902. So you've got this little uprising in part of Europe that is crushed. Now, funny enough, 1902, it's another isometric marker, because now when you come to 1956, you've got the Hungarian uprising that was crushed as well. It's like another repeat. No coincidences, of course, nothing to see here. Make of it this what you will. I'm just sharing things that they've sort of highlighted every now and again, or make the news, or these stories that come around. And of course, it's like when you start comparing, a bit like when you compare Wikipedia articles, the fountain of all knowledge, how some things don't seem to tally, or they, shall we say, they don't seem to add up. And the most amazing thing, of course, about the Wikipedia is just scroll down to the bottom of whatever you look up and see when it was last updated. That's always very interesting as well. Somebody's obviously very busy on keep updating things. It does make you wonder. But because all life is a wonder. So yes, you've got this pendulum swing. Build something up to knock it back down again. Build something up to knock it down again. But at the same time, you've got some real success stories that things like Dr. Oetker pizzas and Bolton biscuits is another big one, and with sort of family businesses that had ancestors with allegedly some sort of dubious political connections in the early 1930s. But I'm just pointing out a few things. I'm not casting any aspersions, but when there seems to be in 1848, and there were the ones that were sort of responsible for that were hung, and they seem to be of a certain type of person, shall we say. The common denominators again. That's the best way I can put that. Those good old traditional German names like Bakunin, for example, I believe is one of the sort of ringleaders of that revolution that didn't happen, didn't succeed. But it reminds me also of what Rudolf Steiner talks about. You've got about this luciferic impulse, and you've also got this Ahrimanic impulse. Interestingly, Ahrimanic sounds a little bit close to Aramaic, but without a man involved. I mean, just an etymological observation. So, what is the future? It's of EU, the EU. It's the Deutschland of today is very much the sort of centre of a lot of the power and the wealth, but obviously in the hands of very few. And can't help but see there's a sort of parallel. There was at one time there was these dictates coming out of Berlin to these satellite puppet governments in the Greater Reich, and now you have this thing called the EU, and funny enough, you've got dictates coming out of Brussels that are going to satellite puppet governments, with the exception, of course, of the UK, which has opted out. But when you consider you have this autonomous landlocked nation, apart from a river theme that runs through it, called City of London, which is a centre of world banking, what difference would being in the EU or not being in the EU make in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the world of finances? So yes, and then of course you've also got this situation where the Polish Prime Minister was demanding German tanks start rolling across there's a sort of an irony to this, and then there's this sort of panic about the Baltic states, which are part of NATO, and how the wicked Russians and their ally in Belarus might sort of make a corridor across Poland. It's like, haven't we seen this story somewhere before? But things seem to have moved a little bit further to the east, towards the rising sun, perhaps. make of this what you will. That's all I'm going to say. But do let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read them. And I'm not being sarcastic. I really would love to read your comments. What have you made any sort of connections between things? But obviously, be careful what you talk about. That saying about knowing who or what you cannot criticize comes to mind. I think we'll leave it at that. I feel that it's not for me to decide whether you are mentally capable of looking at things for yourself. I'll leave that to governments and censorship. They seem to be very good at deciding that something is stirring up hatred, and of course you're not trusted to be able to look at these things and make your own, come to your own decisions or answers about things, because that would be very dangerous for you to exercise your brain and use your own mind. I mean, it is a muscle and it needs exercising like every muscle in the body. Otherwise it just sort of, it doesn't sort of function very well. And of course, well, but you can trust your governments. They've got your best interest at heart, so remember that. And through their various agencies, you have things that are there to protect and serve, of course. So I feel we'll leave it there, and until the next audio, video, or video, depending on whether there's a visual or not, but hopefully that has given you a few things to weigh up inside. But just see things for what they are. Don't go doing things that, don't get all fired up and react negatively and go out there and push against this invisible veil, because it will push back a lot harder and you wouldn't be helping yourself. But you can, by just being observer, the truth is always revealed. And of course the truth is never popular, and what is popular is never the truth, as Ken Wheeler has said, and a very true saying that is. So yes, we'll leave that there, and I shall, until next time,